Imagine you are sitting at a red light on a sweltering July afternoon. Your temperature gauge is sitting perfectly in the center, and you feel a sense of security. You think your engine is staying cool because of the gallons of coolant circulating through the block or the massive fan spinning behind the grill. But you are actually betting your entire engine's life on a small, uncelebrated component that costs less than a lunch at a drive-thru. You think this is just a lid. You think its only job is to keep the green or pink liquid from splashing out onto the pavement. In reality, you're looking at the most sophisticated pressure relief valve in your entire vehicle. This is the radiator cap. It is currently caught in a tug of war between the laws of physics and the structural integrity of your cylinder head. You aren't just looking at a cap, you are looking at the brain of your cooling system. Text pop-up, the brain of the system. If this brain makes one wrong calculation, or if a single internal spring loses its tension, the version of yourself that owns a functioning car is about to be replaced. You will be replaced by the version of yourself that is shopping for a new engine. So why does this matter? Why is a simple metal or plastic cap the difference between a routine commute and a catastrophic thermal event? To understand that, we have to look at the math that governs heat. Most people think water boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. That is a fact on a stovetop at sea level. But inside your engine, 212 degrees is just the beginning of the danger zone. To keep an engine running at peak efficiency, we need to push the coolant way past its natural boiling point without it actually turning into steam. This is where the radiator cap exerts its authority. The cap is designed to physically raise the boiling point of your coolant by keeping the entire system under a calculated amount of pressure. Diagram: pressure versus boiling point. The math is precise. For every 1 psi of pressure you add to the system, you raise the boiling point of the coolant by approximately 2.5 degrees Fahrenheit. If you have a standard 15 psi cap, you are mathematically forcing that liquid to stay in a liquid state until it hits roughly 250 to 260 degrees. This is the difference between a liquid that can absorb heat and a steam pocket that acts like an insulator, leading to an immediate meltdown. Text pop-up, 1 psi. Plateau, 0.5 degrees Phi. When you look at your radiator cap, you aren't looking at a static object. You are looking at a precision-engineered two-way valve. It has a job to do when the engine gets hot, and an equally important, yet often ignored job to do when the engine cools down. This is the invisible cycle of thermal management. Most drivers ignore this component for the first 4 years of a car's life. This is the invisible window, the period where the part works so well that its existence is forgotten. But as the rubber seals begin to harden and the springs begin to fatigue, you enter the zone where wealth goes to die. A failing cap doesn't always announce itself with a bang. It usually starts with a quiet invoice of micro damage that you won't see until the bill is due. Let's break down the anatomy of this device so you can see exactly what is protecting your investment. At the heart of the cap is the large spring, also known as the pressure valve. This spring is calibrated to a specific weight. If your cap says 16 psi, that spring is designed to hold exactly 16 pounds of force before it budges. Below that, you have the pressure seal, which is the lower gasket that sits against the inner seat of your radiator neck. If this seal fails, the pressure can't build, the boiling point doesn't rise, and your engine starts to kettle at temperatures it should handle easily. Text pop-up: the large spring. Pressure control. But look closer at the center of that bottom seal. There is a tiny secondary disc held by a much smaller, much weaker spring. This is the vacuum valve. While the large spring manages the expansion phase, this tiny disc manages the contraction phase. This is where most amateur mechanics get it wrong. They focus on the pressure, but they forget the vacuum. When you turn your engine off and walk away, the coolant begins to cool. As it cools, it contracts. In a sealed system, this contraction creates a powerful vacuum. If that tiny vacuum valve in the center of your cap is stuck or clogged, that vacuum has nowhere to go. It will literally suck your radiator hoses flat, collapsing them until they look like a crushed soda straw. Diagram: collapsed radiator hose. This isn't just a cosmetic issue. A collapsed hose means that the next time you start your car, the water pump is trying to push fluid through a blocked artery. The engine heats up instantly, the pressure spikes, and you are suddenly in a race against a blown head gasket. The radiator cap is the only thing standing between a balanced thermal cycle and a total system collapse. This is why we call it the pressure pivot. It is the moment where the physics of your car switches from active operation to passive recovery. During phase A, the expansion phase, the engine reaches its operating temperature and the coolant expands. Text pop-up. Phase A, the expansion. Once that pressure exceeds the cap's rating, the large spring compresses and the valve lifts. The excess coolant is diverted through an overflow tube into the recovery tank. This is the system exhaling. Without this exit ramp, your radiator would literally burst under the stress of the expanding liquid. But then comes phase B, the contraction phase. As the engine cools, the vacuum pulls that tiny center valve open. The system inhales, drawing the coolant back from the reservoir to ensure the radiator stays 100% full. If this breath is interrupted by a faulty cap, air pockets will form. These air pockets are the silent killers of the automotive world. Air does not transfer heat. It traps it. An air pocket in your cylinder head creates a hot spot where the metal can reach extreme temperatures. Text pop-up, the danger of air pockets. This leads to warped heads, cracked castings, and the unsent invoice of a repair bill that could have been avoided with a $15 part. So, how do you know if your Guardian is failing? How do you recognize the level 3 signs of a cooling system in distress? The most common sign is the white crust. If you see streaks of dried, chalky residue around the neck of your radiator, the cap is leaking pressure. It is no longer holding the line. Another sign is a recovery tank that is constantly full or bubbling. If the cap's pressure valve is weak, it is letting coolant escape to the tank too early and too often. This means your radiator is never reaching the pressure it needs to keep the boiling point high. You are essentially running an unpressurized system. It is like trying to fly a plane with only one wing. It might work for a while, but the margin for error has vanished. Then there is the gravity of cavitation. When the pressure in your system is too low, tiny vapor bubbles form on the blades of your water pump. As these bubbles collapse under the force of the spinning impeller, they create micro-explosions that actually pit and erode the metal of the pump. Diagram: pump cavitation. Over time, your water pump blades disappear, dissolved by the very liquid they are supposed to move. This is the physical cost of a bad radiator cap. This brings us to the protocol of maintenance, the moment where you stop being a passenger in your car's life and start being the driver. Many master mechanics follow the 5-year rule. You should replace your radiator cap every time you flush your coolant. It is the cheapest insurance policy you will ever buy. But when you replace it, you must follow the PSI matching rule. Text pop-up, match the PSI rating. If your car calls for a 16 PSI cap, do not put on an 18 PSI cap thinking it will perform better. That extra 2 PSI might not seem like much, but in an older cooling system, that is the difference between a healthy hose and a tank that explodes. You are essentially increasing the stress on every seal, every gasket, and every seam in the system. Conversely, using a lower rated cap is a recipe for constant overheating. You are lowering the ceiling of what your engine can handle. In modern engineering, particularly in European vehicles, the institutional one approach has taken over. You might open your hood and find no cap on the radiator at all. Instead, the cap is located on a thick, pressurized plastic expansion tank. Don't be fooled. The physics haven't changed. The location has moved to allow for better air separation. The cap on that tank still performs the same two-phase dance of expansion and contraction. It is still the primary pressure relief point for the entire machine. Finally, we must talk about the safety pivot. Never, under any circumstances, remove a radiator cap from a hot engine. This isn't just a suggestion. It is a law of thermodynamics. When you release the pressure on a 240-degree liquid, you are instantly dropping its boiling point back to 212 degrees. The liquid doesn't just sit there. It flash boils into steam instantly. This creates a massive, explosive expansion that will spray scalding liquid and steam directly into your face. The cooling system is a pressurized beast, and the cap is the only thing keeping that beast in its cage. Text pop-up. Danger, never open hot. You didn't start your journey as an expert today with a major overhaul. You started it by understanding the importance of a single spring. That mundane, uncelebrated piece of metal is the most important financial decision you can monitor this month. It is the embarrassing amount of maintenance. The small $15 fix. This prevents the empire of your daily life from crumbling. The next time you check your oil, look at that cap. Check the seals. Make sure they are pliable, not cracked or swollen. Check the springs to ensure they still have the tension required to hold back the heat. Because the machine doesn't care about your intentions, it only cares about the pressure. You are the steward of this system. By respecting the physics of the radiator cap, you are casting a vote for the longevity of your vehicle. You are moving from a person who simply owns a car to a person who manages a machine. In high-performance engineering, that is the only transition that actually matters. Text pop-up from owner to manager. The radiator cap is a testament to the idea that in engineering, as in life, the smallest components often carry the heaviest burdens. It is a two-way valve, a pressure regulator, and a safety fuse all wrapped into one. It is the Wednesday afternoon of parts. Unseen, unthanked, but absolutely essential. Treat it with the respect it deserves, and your engine will repay you with hundreds of thousands of miles of cool, stable operation. Ignore it, and you will eventually receive a silent, permanent invoice that you simply cannot afford to pay. The choice is yours. A $15 spring today, or a $5,000 engine tomorrow. That is the ultimate math of the radiator cap.